Here we go. Howdy, y'all. It's your favorite trainer with a belt buckle.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Megan, and today we're going to go over 2 topics that you're most likely going to see when you're taking the NASM-CPT. But before we get to that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And you can also find me on Instagram, ACT7VE active. If you need help passing that exam, I can also tutor you 30-minute, 60-minute sessions. We want you to pass this test as fast as you can. So,
a month. That's it. Just do it in a month. Get it over with, and then get in to start training, supervised experience. 2 common themes, questions that we see a lot, the feedback that we get, are what?
It's going to be planes of motion and then cueing.
So planes, what are the 3?
You got sagittal, frontal, and transverse.
There you go. So think about it, you're in a clock. Front and back, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So what's the actual definition of sagittal?
So it's going to be like an imaginary line dividing the body into left and right halves.
Allowing for flexion and extension. And then if you're in that clock, we got 3 o'clock, we have 9 o'clock. And so this is going to be frontal. What's the definition of that?
Dividing the body into anterior and posterior halves.
And last but not least, any other time on the clock, it's going to be rotation, transverse. And what's the definition of that?
It's going to divide the body into superior, above, and inferior, below halves.
So let's take a look at a common exercise. They're not going to quiz you a ton on muscles, like what is the agonist for a lat pull down? That's like the most advanced they're going to get. Do you know the 17 muscles of the shoulder? Probably not. They're not going to question you on that, but we will. So let's take a look at a dumbbell row, for example. So if I'm facing you, Megan, what plane of motion is this?
I would say that is sagittal.
Why?
And that's because if you look at the humerus, it's extending back.
So they're not going to ask you that. They're just going to say, what plane of motion is a dumbbell row? So you should know the humerus is extending in that sagittal plane. That's going to make it easier for you. Don't just look at an exercise and associate it with that plane. Learn the anatomy. Look at Skelly over here and just look at movement. Flexion, extension. That's going to be sagittal. AB, AD. That's going to be frontal. And any type of horizontal, AB, AD, or rotation is going to be transverse. Let's take a look at another exercise.
All right, we have a squat. So I'm going down and back up. What's that going to be?
Sagittal. Hip extension. Glute max. You want a big ass? You got to extend your leg. Your femur. You got your glute max. Your G is the, I screwed up on that one. Bicep femoris for the B. There you go. The gluteus maximus. The adductor magnus. And SS, semimembranosus, semitendinosus. But they're not going to get into those specifics. Check out our other videos with the most overactive and underactive muscles. Top 5 is all you need to memorize. The last one we're going to take a look at will be a military press. So what's happening? What plane of motion am I doing here?
We're going to be in the frontal.
Because of abduction. This would be called a unilateral press. This would be a bilateral press. If I were to do something like this, this is making reference to contralateral. They're not going to ask you that. They keep it pretty simple. They want you to get the PES. They want you to get the CES. Don't get the bundle. If you did, 28 days for a refund. Take that money, buy me a bottle of whiskey, get into the internship. You will learn so much more. I challenge anyone, 1 week, you'll learn more than this entire textbook. All of the certifications together. What's the other thing that we should be aware of with the studying for the exam?
You might see some questions about cueing. So what is cueing? You have auditory cues, you have tactical cues, all that type of stuff. So an example would be if your client's down, can I see me?
Yeah.
Down on the floor and they're doing a glute bridge. What would you cue your client to do or not to do?
Yeah, so they're going to talk about valgus, so you have to cue out, or anterior pelvic tilt. So what would be the answer they're looking for?
So they're going to want you to not to hyperextend. As such.
Now, what plane of motion is that? Sagittal, hip extension, primarily a hinge pattern. When we squat, it's more of a knee dominant exercise, so that's a squat pattern. We got a push, we have a press. NASM updated that in the 7th edition. You're not going to see that in the 6th, but this video will help anyone trying to study for the 6th or the 7th. It's very, very similar. We've had people pass the 7th with the 6th study guide, but the study guide is what's going to get you through there. Just study it, 39 pages, 40 pages. We have a lot of questions that are similar. You will absolutely knock this out of the park. Boom! Boom! We've had over 1,400 people pass it. What will be another cue you could talk about?
Another one that you could see is if someone is running. So they're going to talk about front side mechanics and back side mechanics. So when you're thinking about running, you have triple flexion. So that's going to be hip flexion, knee flexion, and then also at the ankle, which is going to be dorsiflexion.
Backside mechanics, triple extension. I remember people talking about a very common question. You're going to rotation. What's the ending position there? Triple extension, because you have hip extension, sagittal plane, knee extension, and then you're going to have plantar flexion, which is technically flexion, is triple extension. They call that extension as well. So you want to pass an NASM-CPT. You're freaking out. You're sweating bullets. Don't. Just study the guide. The example we give in class, because we teach live Zoom calls once a week, Tuesdays. At
5 p.m.
That's Pacific time.
Yeah.
So California time is what we say, because you Eastern folk always screw it up. We screw it up too. That's going to be 5 o'clock. Send us a DM. We'll get you in one of those for free so you can check it out. Show Up Fitness internship.
Active.
She forgot for a second. Find us on Instagram. Make sure to like and subscribe. And hold on. Yep, wait for it. Here it is. You got to read the book. That's what's going to help you be successful. Look at that sucker, the belt buckle. Woo! Keep showing up. 7:30.